Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. Game Week 15 is done. Before we get into anything serious, I just want to start off on a bit of a sad note. Michail Antonio was involved in a collision and he broke his leg. He seems to be okay now in that he's conscious and he's talking and he's communicative, but we hope that he will be able to recover and return. He's 34, so that has its own complications. Having said that, if anyone can recover from it, it's probably athletes. These guys are built different. So this week started off quite weirdly with flood, but basically heavy downpour and storms caused the Merseyside derby to be postponed. And that is where our weekend went to crap for many of us. No Salah, and you just had to hope that your vice captain was the right one. And if it wasn't Palmer, it was most likely the wrong one. We were hoping for a landslide victory in the Villa-Southampton game. And what happens? Kins doesn't even start. And they just win 1-0. John Duran scores and there's not even an assist. I guess if you had a Villa defender, well done to you. Mbumo scores at home again. Brentford continue to be good again at home. Newcastle disappoint. Just when you think City are back, they draw 2-2 with Crystal Palace. Man United lose to Forest. Arsenal don't beat Fulham. And Saka has a goal disallowed late in the game. Ipswich looked like they were going to win this game 1-0. And then out of nowhere, Bournemouth just wake up and the game ends 2-1. Brighton looked like they were dead. Or rather, it looked like they had gone and this game was dead and buried. And then, in the last 10 minutes, 2-2. Vardy wakes up. Leicester. True manager bounce. Spurs take a 2-0 lead against Chelsea. I personally am thinking, okay, not this again. And then they somehow lose this game 4-3. They just made so many mistakes. A bunch of us had been counting on Wolves to perform, and then they get beaten by West Ham 2-1. No Cunha points, no Strand Larsen points, nothing. Ask people who have Rico Lewis. He scores, and then he gets sent off. And so he loses half of his points. João Pedro, Cunha, Nicholas Jackson, after looking like great steals, and now looking like scams. And don't even get me started on Welbeck. You see what happens when Salah doesn't play? We are exposed. And then something that personally hurts me is that Holland had a bonus point removed. I don't know why. So at the very least, we now know that thanks to the Liverpool cancellation, we have a double game coming up. The highest scoring game of the weekend. So Chelsea take on Spurs, which was also the marquee game of the weekend. It ended Chelsea 4, Spurs 3. This was a very interesting game because Spurs only scored because of Chelsea mistakes. Correa literally slipped twice. It's like he was wearing glass boots. He just slipped twice and Tottenham scored twice. He changed his boots after that and he was fine since that moment. So Kulusevski and Solanke scored. And then Sancho scored. There was a penalty. Palmer scored. Enzo Fernandez scored. Palmer scored another penalty. And then Son scored to make it look like it was a tight game. This was a kind of game which made you feel bad if you're a Spurs fan because they had their chances to win, but they just did not take them. And if you're a Chelsea fan, this is a great season. Chelsea are looking good. Honestly, this is the best they've looked for a long time. For people like me who had Salah as captain and then had Palmer as the vice, this was gold. Palmer had 2 goals and an assist. Caicedo and Cucurella had the other assists. For Spurs, Johnson, Maddison and Pedro Porro had the assists. And
Palmer got 3 bonus points, Enzo got 2, and Sancho got 1. In terms of a disappointing game,
well, it is a disappointing game for Spurs. But another one would be probably, I would say, Arsenal 1, Fulham 1. I only say this because of context. Arsenal are trying to win the Premier League. Liverpool are not playing. This is a great opportunity to close the gap and add pressure. But that simply did not happen. Jimenez scored a really good goal off a nice pass from Tete. And Saliba scored a goal, which to me looked offside, but was onside. And then Saka had a goal denied late. And that was it. Arsenal will feel like they could have won that game. But it seems like in a similar boat to City in that the things which usually go for you are not going for you. It was particularly painful for those people who had captained Saka to watch their goal being annulled and then to see him finish with 3 points. So when it comes to bonus points, Raul got the 3, Raul Jimenez. Sander Berger got 2. Rice and Saliba shared each a bonus point. Havertz had the assist for Saliba's goal. And like I said, Tete had the assist for Raul Jimenez's goal. The next contender would be West Ham 2, Wolves 1. I believe one of these two managers will be sacked first in terms of the Premier League managers. And I now think that it is Gary who will be sacked before Mr. Lopetegui. There was only one clean sheet this weekend. So we all know already that defenses didn't perform too well this time round. In goal, the top performing goalkeeper was Emi Martinez from Aston Villa, the only team that kept a clean sheet. Tied for 2-5, Kepa with 3. Flecken, Leno, and Lumley all had 3. When it comes to defenders, Saliba had 9, Konsa and Lamptey had 8. If you haven't seen Lamptey's goal, check it out. It was beautiful. Diogo Carlos had 7, tied with Collins, Nunez, Lacroix, and Milenkovic. As the tradition goes, I'll read everybody who got above 10. So when it comes to midfielders, Palmer was the best, 18, followed by Mbumo and Gibbs White, who were tied for 13. Ouattara from Bournemouth got 12, along with Owen. Hughes from Crystal Palace had 11, along with D. Cordova-Reid. Hughes was impressive. If you watch that game, the quality of his passing was something else. When it comes to forwards, Jamie Vardy was a top-performing striker. He had 12, followed by John Duran, who had 8, along with Raul Jimenez and Højlund, and Isak and Wood, who all had 8. Let's go over some stats. Cole Palmer has scored 12 of his penalties in the Premier League. The best 100% record of any player in the competition. Previously, it was Yaya Toure who had 11 of 11. Now it is him who has 12 for 12. Miss Wood, with the goal he scored against Manchester United, has now become Forest's top goal scorer in the Premier League. And like I'd said in a previous episode, now he's tied for number 2 with Alan Shearer for being top scorer for 2 clubs in the Premier League. Well done to him. On Chris Wood, there is something called most valuable goal scorers. And this basically shows how your points, rather your goals, have been converted into points for your team. He is number 1. He has scored 10 goals, and from those 10 goals, they are directly responsible for 12 points. Number 2 is Haaland. He scored 13 goals, and those 13 goals are directly responsible for 12 points. Salah has 13 goals, and those are directly tied to 11 points. Wissa, 9 goals, 8 points. Mbumo, 9 goals, 8 points. So they're equally as important as each other. John Duran, 5 goals, 8 points. Welbeck, 6 goals, 8 points. Brentford have the best home form this season, and they have gained 22 points out of a possible 24. And comparatively, away from home, they've only gotten 1 point, and they've lost all the rest of the games. So basically, play their assets at home, put them on the bench away.
Crystal Palace are in good form and they have now only lost one in their last 6 games. Since September 22nd, Manchester City have conceded the second most big chances in the Premier League.
Southampton are the first, Leicester are the third,
and Ipswich are the fourth. Talk about poor form. John Duran scored over the weekend,
and he has scored 10 Premier League goals, and this was his second as a starter. When it comes to minutes per goals this season, he is leading the way. He has scored a minimum of 5 goals. That's how you qualify for this start. And he scores every 81.2 minutes. Number 2 is Mo Salah with 13 goals. He scores every 94.5 minutes. Number 3 is Wissa. He scores every 98.7 minutes. Erling Haaland scores every 103.8 minutes. Chris Wood scores every 115.4 minutes. So if you're looking for somebody who scores goals frequently, I have just read them out to you. Ipswich.
They have been threatening to win, and this game was no different against Bournemouth. They were up 1-0 in the 80-something minute,
and then they lost 2-1. Officially this season, they have the most dropped points from a winning position, with 15 points lost. Fulham are number 2 with 15. I guess it's a tie. Brentford and Brighton are tied with 14 points lost. Forest 11, Southampton 11, and Wolves 11.
Amorim, before coming to the Premier League,
was on a 34 league game unbeaten run at home. He's now lost back-to-back matches, so that is over.
Manchester United are in the lowest position they have been after 15 Premier League games since the 1986-87 season, and Ferguson came soon after. Is Amorim the new Ferguson?
Manchester City have conceded 7 goals in the opening 15 minutes of matches this season. That is more than anybody else this season. Wolves have conceded a league-high 15 goals from set-piece situations. The last time they did this was when they were relegated in 03-04 and 11-12, and they conceded 20 and 18 in those seasons. So they're in relegation form right now. Souček scored the goal that put West Ham ahead of Wolves 1-0. He has done this 19 times, scoring the goal that puts West Ham ahead in their matches. Only 2 other people are better than him at this. Mark Noble, who has now retired, and Michail Antonio. Noble has 20 and Antonio has 34. This is the 11th time that Tottenham have lost a Premier League game after having been 2+ goals ahead. Cole Palmer now has 50 goal involvements, 33 goals and 17 assists in 48 Premier League games for Chelsea. Only Haaland for Manchester City, 39, and Andy Cole for Newcastle, 43, Mo Salah, 46, have ever reached 50 in fewer Premier League games. So we are watching something special. Jamie Vardy scored and assisted against Brighton. He is the second oldest player to ever do so, at 37 years old and 332 days. The oldest is Ryan Giggs, who did this in 2011. He was 38 years old and 22 days versus Fulham. Arsenal have scored 20 goals from set pieces, excluding penalties, in the Premier League in the year 2024. This is their joint most in a calendar year since 2009. Arsenal have not kept a clean sheet in any of their 6 last away games. This is their longest running streak under Michail Antonio. Tottenham have just kept 1 clean sheet in their last 22 Premier League home games. Palmer was the most selected player for this game week. Salah was the most captained, but most vice-captained was Palmer.
Well done to everybody who vice-captained Palmer, and sorry to everybody else.
When looking at top transfers in this game week, Saliba is number 1 with 195,000. Isak number 2 with 183,000. Enzo Fernandez 149,000. Palmer 146,000. And Salah 124,000. When it comes to people being brought out of their teams, Welbeck finally leads away with 132,000. Done with him. Haaland, 120,000. Gabriel, 117,000. Watkins, 113,000. Emil Smith Rowe, 111,000. The average points for this game week was 50. If you got above 50, well done. You're doing well. The highest points this week was 119. You won't believe the luck of this person. This person triple captain Salah. He was going to play against Everton, so he was hopeful. His vice captain was Palmer. So triple captaining Palmer gave him 54 points. In the midfield as well, he had Morgan Gibbs-White, who gave him 13. Enzo Fernandez gave him 9. Saliba gave him 9. Vestergaard gave him 1. Collins gave him 7. Gusto 1. Martinez gave him 6. Up top, he had Verdi and Haaland. He also had one player missing and he had no substitutes on the bench. So with 10 players, 119 was the best tally this weekend. When it comes to our group, the 38 weeks to go group brought to you by Arena 1, our leader had 82 points. This manager is called Gerald Juma and the team is called Jatello. Gerald Juma had Haaland up top, who gave him 7. Delap had 1. Havertz had 5. In midfield, he had Brennan Johnson, who gave him 4. Anacho, who gave him 4. Boomer, who gave him 13. And Palmer as captain, who gave him 36. Ike Nouri was his defender at the back, who gave him 4. Pedro Porro gave him 3. Kakes gave him 2. And Leno gave him 3. And that gave him a grand total of 82 points. Somehow, when you look at the team, it doesn't look impressive, but I guess everything adds up. 82 points. Congratulations to you, sir. Number 2 was Vibhav Naik, manager of Bud King 15. They got 81 points. His Masika of Rokumbaya got 80 points, along with Mike FC, managed by Mike Muturi. And rounding up the top 5, we have Lawyer Malik, managed by Abdul Malik Alawadi. He got 79 points. When you get many points like that, it has an effect on your standing on the table. Gerald Juma, manager of Jotelo, increased his global rank by 1.25 million. Well done to you, sir. In the league, the person who jumped the highest was Chris Masika, manager of Rojo Baya. He jumped up 40 positions. Nuksin Athman jumped up 34 positions. Caleb Omondi jumped 31. Jatello jumped 31. And Arnoldinho Arnold, manager of Comoros FC, rounds up the top 5 and jumped up 30 positions. In terms of team value change, Gunners, or Gunners, managed by Neville Jabali, has added 0.6 to his bank. The highest team value is Suraj by Gan's team. They have a value of 104.9. That's quite valuable. I think for the first time this season, Don Clinton has not made a single transfer. Number 1 in the transfer is Victor Nell, manager of Leeches. They made 8 transfers. Number 2, Dennis Com made 8 transfers. Number 3 was Victor Nyabola, who made 6. And running up number 4 and number 5 is a tie between Rashok Ngailo and Abdallah Rashid, who made 5 transfers each. The manager who had the most points lost on the bench this week is Pablo Sanjeev. They had 21 points on the bench. You won't believe me when I tell you this, but the 18 points of the 21 points, 18 of those points came from Palmer. Yes, this captain or this manager left Palmer on the bench. That is just wild to me, considering the midfield consisted of Mboma, Emil Smith Rowe, Iwobi, and Dibbling. Somehow there was no space for Palmer. That must hurt. In second place, they had 17 points on the bench. Melvin Keter, Keter's FC. They used their wildcard, so I can understand this a bit. there was really no space for Bowen on his team. He had Fernandes on the bench, Saka on the bench, Palm on the bench, and Amad Diallo. I guess he didn't know whether Bowen would play, and that's how it happened. Up top, he had Nicholas Jackson, João Pedro, and Cunha. This was a great strike for 3 weeks ago. In terms of disappointing transfers made, architect Sadiq Suleiman took a hit of -12, got 33 points, and had he left his team, he would have been 21 points better. It's not so painful. Yai Pasua was number 2 with 18 points lost from transfer moves. Joe Barraza, 18. And in a tie for number 4 and number 5, Joe Jota, manager of Oyo FC, and Lawrence Agyapong, manager of AFC Level Ups. They lost 17 points. Sui has now had 12 red arrows. And that is tough. Good luck to you, sir. You can fix it. There is time. Joe Jota, who we've just talked about in terms of a poor transfer outcome, has the most overall decrease in rank in our table. He fell out roughly just under 1.1 million positions in the global ranking. He also dropped the most in the league table. He dropped a whopping 38 positions. Victor Nell also dropped 33 positions. Panyako Nyerere, Grant Havertz dropped 27. Naim Ali dropped 26. And GJ, manager of Siege, dropped 26 positions as well. Just to round up what you can only call like a very bad week for Mr. George Jota. He is the one who was our lowest performer this week and got a whopping 24 points. So, his goalkeeper was Henderson, who gave him 1. Pedro Porro gave him 3. Mazuri gave him 1. Robinson gave him 1. Rogers gave him 2. Emil Smith-Rowe gave him 1. Saka gave him 2. Yamolenko gave him 2. Watkins gave him 2. Wood gave him 8. Cunha gave him 1. Salah was his captain, and that's where everything came from. That's where everything went to shit. And then, unfortunately, Ollie Watkins was his vice captain, who came and had 1 and 2 as his captain. Onyango Mandela, manager of Katambe, had 25 points. Naim Ali got 26. Ali Mudin got 28. And Melvin Kathrima got 29. And those were our lowest performers this week. Lowest team value, Noel Ritchie, 97.7. Worst team value change is Madman Bielsa. Their team value has dropped by 0.8. Vinny McCory is a team whose players scored the most, with 7 different goal scorers in his team. Muxin FC has been on the global rank risers for the 10th straight week. Keep it up. Qatar's FC gained 36 points thanks to their shrewd acquisitions. Keep it going. When it comes to captains, Salah was the most popular captain. 79 of us chose him as captain. Haaland was the second most popular, with 46 people choosing him as captain. Saka was chosen by 43 people as captain. After that, Palmer was chosen by 28 people as captain. Watkins was chosen by 12 people as captain. I'm really sorry, nobody knew he was not going to start. But I guess with Champions League, maybe we should have thought about that rotation. Nicholas Jackson was captained by 4 people. Rashford was captained by 3. De Bruyne was captained by 2. Wissa was captained by 2. Havertz was captained by 2. Strand Larson was captained by 1. Cunha was captained by 1. I'm honestly surprised it's just 1. Isak was captained by 1. Gordon was captained by 1. Hoyland, I guess if you don't change your team, you can be right twice. Hoyland was captained by 1. Ahmad was captained by 1. Trent was captained by 1. João Pedro was captained by 1. Morgan Rogers by 1. And Odegaard by 1. Very many people chasing the differential. I respect the idea of that. I'm just sorry it didn't work out the way you wanted. At the top of our table, we have a new leader.
Walker Dead had chosen Saka as his captain, and that cost him. This is Texas 10's manager of Tenor FC become our new leader. They have 1,003 points. Also our first person to cross 1,000. They got 73 points this week. Congratulations to you. Walker Dead has been deposed and they're number 2. They have 49 points and they got 981 points. So Texas 10s becomes number 1 and takes over by 22 points. Number 3 is somebody new, John Mangemi. They have 66 points from the game week and 972 points overall. Number 4 is Oti Omundi, manager of Odu, 67 points, 969. So you can see the new players in the top 5. Number 5 is Lawyer Malik, 79 points, 965 points in total. Number 6 is Franklin Asiema. They have 957 points. Number 7 is Alan Mushangi, Junior FC, got 954 points. Duboy Original, 953 points. Number 9 is Ano Midunga, FC Big Man Bossy. They got 951 points. Abdallah Kili is number 10. They have 944 points, tied with their Schmetterling, managed by Kevin Machilimo, who has really dropped out of the top 10. They got 36 points, and that is the reason why. So, from number 14 has 942. Number 10, from number 14 to number 7 is 10 points. From number 7 to number 6 is 3. From number 6 to number 5 is 8. From number 5 to number 4 is 4 points. From number 4 to number 3 is 3 points. Number 3 to number 2 is 9 points. And number 2 to number 1 is 22 points. So number 1 has really tried to open a gap. Let's see how this weekend goes for Mr. Texas 10s. At the bottom of the table, we have Don Clinton, who didn't make any moves. Maybe they're stabilized in their decision making, or maybe they're happy with the team that they got now. 339 points. Then Real Vincenza, managed by Anzigare, has 571. And so you have 237. That's our last position. He is somebody who makes moves every week, and Duncan Anzigare doesn't make any moves. Just made and set his team. So it shows that both are not a solid philosophy unless you choose the right players for both. And then after those, 235 has 592, 234 has 599, 233 has 604, 232 has 606. And those are the bottom 7. As we look forward to the new game week, it's important to note that Champions League starts today, Tuesday. This podcast is recorded on a Tuesday. And therefore, I will be hoping that our players will come out of it unscathed. But keep an eye on the results and the fixtures, and just to see if the players come out unscathed before making your team. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. The game week will begin with Arsenal taking on Everton. Everton did not play last time out because of the storm. Arsenal played a 1-1 draw in the London Derby with Fulham. Arsenal will have played Champions League, and they may be extra ready, or Everton might be too fresh for them. It's really not clear how this will go. But should they come out of this unscathed, they will be favourites for this encounter. As it stands, Declan Rice will be suspended for this game. So it means he won't be giving the corners. I'm not sure if Dobio will be back because I think he's still under the concussion protocol. I don't know how long it is. Outside those two, Zinchenko is unavailable, Ben White is still unavailable, and Calafiori is doubtful. On the Everton end, Ghana is unavailable along with Keane, Erid Bonham, and Chermeti. Like I said the last time, Everton have scored 4 goals in the last 5 matches. However, all those 4 came against Wolves. So they're not doing very well moving forward. Arsenal have won 4 out of their last 5 encounters against Everton and will be favourites. If you remember earlier,
I spoke about Arsenal not having kept a clean sheet away from home for 6 games. However, at home, they've kept a clean sheet in their last 2 games. I'm hoping for this to be a third game week in a row. To that end, if you have your Saliba, that would be your guy, and your David Raya. And then moving forward, you have the options of Saka, number 1, Havertz, number 2, and then pick your poison after that. On the Everton end, you're only really hoping for them to draw. It's going to be very difficult for them to get a positive result out of this one unless red cards are involved. However, if you have their players, like their defenders, just keep them. But if you have better alternatives on the bench, start those ahead. Liverpool versus Fulham. Fulham managed to get a draw against Arsenal last time out, and that may lead them to believe that they can get a draw against Liverpool. I had previously said do not get into Fulham's defense because of their matches, and just as you can see, they didn't keep a clean sheet, and this one will be a tough one as well. If you have to get a defender, Tete seems to be their most productive defender right now. And then you get Iwobi and maybe Raul Jimenez. On the Liverpool end, depending on how Champions League goes, if they come out unscathed, you have Salah, Gakpo, and Trent. For Fulham, Kearney is unavailable as he's suspended, along with Bassi. Reed, Anderson, and Nelson are out. Tsimikas, Konate, Chiesa, and Bradley are injured for Liverpool. Liverpool have won their last 5 encounters against Fulham, but both teams have scored in all encounters, meaning that this won't be a good game for defense. And it seems like Fulham tend to push Liverpool. So don't count them out of making this an interesting game like Southampton did the other day. Newcastle take on Leicester. Ordinarily, it would be easy to say Newcastle will win this game because they are at home. However, the new manager bounce is proving to be a real thing for Leicester right now, and they're proving to be quite defiant. I can tell you this, even if Newcastle win, unless they win 1-0, Leicester are going to push them. And to that end, if you're getting into Leicester, you should definitely get Jamie Vardy, Bonanote, and maybe Ayew. Looking at people who will be unavailable, Raft, Lascelles, Willock, and Botman are unavailable for Newcastle. Sumare, Winks, Fatau, Tolarik, Edward, Didi, Pereira are injured for Leicester. If you're choosing Newcastle players, you have to start with Isak, and then maybe Harvey Barnes or Gordon. And if you feel like getting a defender, don't. Well, get either Lewis Hall or what's it called, or Fabian Schär. Both teams haven't kept a clean sheet in over 5 matches, so a clean sheet might be tough. It might be like this weekend where we get 1 or 2 clean sheets. Wolves versus Ipswich. This is a very important game at the bottom of the table. I don't necessarily think the Ipswich boss McKenna's job is under fire, but Gary O'Neill will definitely not do himself any favors if he does not win this game. So the pressure is really mounting for him. For Wolves, Gomez is suspended. Traore, Gonzalez, Sarabia, Kaladzic, and Mosquera will not play this game. Ogbene, Slicker, Hurst, and Twanzebe are unavailable for this game. Ipswich lost painfully to Bournemouth last time out. They start well and finish poorly, and that will be the thing they need to overcome in this game. However, Wolves are quite similar to them. It's really like for like in this game. Oranges and oranges. On paper, Wolves are the better team, and it shouldn't even be a contest. But in reality, they're not too different from each other. So if you're choosing a Wolves player, I know people are done with Cunha right now. He hasn't delivered in like 2 or 3 weeks, but he's still their best option. Him, Strand Larsen, and probably one of the Portuguese midfielders. Pick your pick of the one that's available. And then after that, if you really want to gamble on the defense, which you shouldn't, it would be Aït-Nouri. But do not bring Aït-Nouri. But if you already have him, you could keep him. On the other end, you really have Delap, Hutchinson, and Smotsic. I believe there will be goals in this game. Ipswich have scored in 8 of their last 11 games, and they're therefore always a threat. Wolves lost West Ham last time out, and they just need victories. This is the spell they're supposed to be winning, but they haven't got the memo yet. So this is definitely a marquee game, but at the bottom. Both teams have lost their last 3 matches, and Wolves have conceded the most penalties this season, 5. So if Omari Hutchinson and Smotsic can run at them, maybe they'll get something out of that. Nottingham Forest versus Aston Villa. Aston Villa will be playing in the Champions League, and this will affect the team that they put out. Now, also, they have not been in great form. Of course, in the last 2 games, they have improved. They've gotten 2 victories. But Champions League might affect them. And we saw Watkins being rested for John Duran, so that means that kind of thing might happen again. So I would be wary of choosing their attacking players. And if you believe they'll keep a clean sheet, this is the time where you get one of their defenders. And of course, one of their attackers. Now, if they do well, I would recommend Watkins, Morgan Rogers still, and maybe Digne. Looking at the injuries, it's only Ramsey and Bailey out for Villa, and Danilo and Sangare out for Forest. Now, when coming to Forest, Wood has been in great form, and then you have to go Morgan Gibbs-White, and then your choice of Callum Hudson-Odoi or Elanga. However, I would go Wood and then Gibbs-White. I can't imagine having 3 players from that team. And then also, if you have one of the defenders, you're fine. Everyone has their favorites. One can be Aina, another one could be Murillo, another one could be now Neliokovic. Forgive me. On Sunday, it'll be Brighton versus Crystal Palace. Now, Brighton were pegged back 2-2 in the dying minutes by Leicester. And honestly, if that game went for another 10 minutes, they could have lost. They were just simply overwhelmed by Leicester's brute force. Now, Crystal Palace will be a different challenge, but of the same nature. Crystal Palace have been really tough to defeat. They haven't lost in their last 5 games, or rather they've lost 1 in their 6 games, and they make it difficult. Ask Man City. Now, from Crystal Palace, you have Munoz, Mateta, Eze. But if you want to gamble, you can really try Will Hughes. He was really impressive last time out. On the Brighton end, now this one is tricky because since João Pedro came back, Welbeck has disappeared. It's almost like they cannot both flourish. And I would therefore struggle to recommend either of those guys and say just go Mitoma and then choose either Estupinian or Lamptey and then gamble with either Baleba or Mr. Minte. Now, when it comes to unavailable players, Webster, Adioglu, Henshaw-Wood, Milner, Veltman, and Solimacha out. For Crystal Palace, Wharton, Riyad, and Franca are out. Brighton haven't kept a clean sheet in their last 8 matches, and I believe that trend will continue in this one. The marquee game of the weekend sees Manchester United take on Manchester City. And this is a Manchester derby. Both teams are far from being in their greatest form in any way, shape, or form. Both seem to be in transitions of sorts, and maybe that's what makes this game interesting. It makes the game more open, more unpredictable, especially given that Man City have been conceding big chances at a rate that is ridiculous. There's an opportunity there. Now, Ruben Amorim before he came to Man. He just finished beating Manchester City 4-1. That was his last official game in the Champions League. Maybe if he can replicate that in some form, they would be victorious in this. And to that end, Fernandes, Amad Diallo, and maybe Højlund would be the best way to go if you're looking at Manchester United. Rashford may or may not start. It's not clear what's happening, but he doesn't track back. Everybody knows he doesn't defend well, and maybe that's what's affecting his starting position. I don't think this is a game for defense, so I wouldn't encourage you to have goalkeepers or defenders from either side. Now, when it comes to unavailable players, Luke Shaw, Johnny Evans, and Lindelof are unavailable. Rico Lewis is suspended, although it may be overturned, but he's suspended as it stands. John Stones, Akanji, Kovacic, Ake, Bob, Foden, and Rodri are out. From Manchester City, you have to go with the big man himself, Mr. Haaland. KDB, of course, and Silva. Silva tends to be a big game player, so I have no problems recommending him. If you have to have a Manchester City defender, it just has to be Vardiol. That's it. Both teams were unimpressive last time out, and they will be looking to do better. Chelsea take on Brentford, and both of these teams were impressive last time out. Now, Brentford have only gotten 1 point away from home. They've lost all the rest. So, they have 22 of 24 points at their stadium and 1 point away. So, they have 23 points. They're horrible away from home. Chelsea have been better than anybody could have expected. They are at home, and they should be the favorite for this fixture, given Brentford's away form. Of course, this could be the game that Brentford change things, but I don't believe that it will be true. So, to that end, Neto, Palmer, Cucurella are the Chelsea players I'd recommend. Scratch that. Not Neto, but Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, because he has delivered for me in the last 3 weeks, so I can't forget him, and Cucurella. Enzo and Cucurella are sneaky Chelsea players that have been delivering over the last 3 weeks. Now, a bunch of us have Brentford players, so I wouldn't recommend you to get them out of the team, but the odds are that they're not going to win this game, and so if you have the defenders, this is the time you put them on the bench. And your Mbumo, do not captain him. Your Wisas, do not captain them. Now, having said everything I have said, it is very important to know that Chelsea have not beaten Brentford in their last 5 attempts. Brentford have won 3 and drawn twice. Do with that what you will. Will you judge based on history or on recent form? I will let you decide. Southampton versus Tottenham. Now, Tottenham were very disappointing against Chelsea, and they left very disappointed. Now, they're playing Southampton, and the worst part is that I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they were beaten in this game. However, I will just say that they are the better team on paper. And to that end, I would say Kulusevski, Brennan Johnson, and Solanke are the first 3 players I would recommend. If you think they would keep a clean sheet, go with whichever defender tickles your fancy. Southampton are tough. I wouldn't recommend you getting into their team. I only have their defenders because I need somebody who's cheap. They lost last time out to Aston Villa, and if you're to choose players from their team, I would say Dibbling always tends to be creative, Armstrong would score, and maybe Fernandes. If you're getting a defender, if you have more than 4, I would suggest Kyle Walker-Peters. If you just have 4, I would say Howard Bellis. If you want a keeper who will give you 2 to 5 points just from making saves, Lumley. Stevens is suspended from this game. Ramsdale, Lallana, Bazunu, Bednarek, Onwachu, Stewart, and Smallbone are out for Southampton, whilst Betancourt and Bissouma are suspended for Spurs, whilst Davis, Johnson, Romero, Vicario, Van der Ven, Moore, Richarlison, Odegaard are unavailable. So I know I just recommended Brennan Johnson,
but it's just a knock, and they say he will be back in a few days. He is doubtful. So I would go Kulusevski ahead of him. Bournemouth versus West Ham. Now, Bournemouth are just the wild card this season. They can absolutely beat anybody and at any time. And who will perform? Absolutely anybody in their team. Today could be Tavernier. Tomorrow it's Semenyo. The next day it's Kluivert. Next day it's Evanilson. Then it's Ouattara or Unal. You just really never know where it's coming from. And somebody who has been forgotten for some time is Billing. He was delivering last season, but he hasn't done anything this season. So when he wakes up, last time out, they came to beat Ipswich, scoring their first goal in the 87th minute and then 10 minutes later scoring the winner. You just can't count them out. Unal and Ouattara scored, but I can't recommend them. You really have to go with Semenyo, mainly because he's a chief trouble creator. And then Evan Nielsen as well, because he will start as well. And then Kluivert. You see, that's already 3. And so if you want a defender, Turkis. For Bournemouth, Araujo is out, Scott, Finisterra, Senesi, Adams, all out. As we started the podcast, as you know, Antonio is out and he's done for the season. Emerson is suspended. On the West Ham end, Souček, Owen, and Wan-Bissaka are the players I'd recommend. Not because I believe that there'll be a clean sheet in this game, it's just that the defenders I've recommended are likely to be involved in either goal creation or goal scoring themselves. When it comes to captain choices, Arsenal versus Everton, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody chose a defender like Saliba. He has been sneaky good. He could be a differential captain. Saka, of course. Liverpool, Fulham, Raul Jimenez, if you're a real gambler. And then Salah, if you want safe and tried and true and trusted. Newcastle versus Leicester. I would say Isak is at home. Isak might be the goal scorer. Wolves versus Ipswich. If you want to choose one, not ahead of the other captains. So I'll leave that at that. Nottingham Forest versus Aston Villa. I would say Wood because he has been consistent. If you want a slightly gamblier guess, go for Morgan Gibbs-White. Brighton versus Crystal Palace. I can't imagine getting into this looking for a captain. Man City versus Man United. This one I can see somebody thinking one of the other teams will be hammered. If you believe Manchester City will hammer Man United, Haaland and KDB are good captain choices. And if you believe it the other way, Fernandes would be a great shout as captain. And then I've seen somebody captaining Højlund for a while now. He could be a good one. And a sneaky one could be Diallo. If you watch him, if you see how integral he is to creating chances for them. On the Chelsea end, Palmer is the obvious captain. If you want to be really gambly, you could go with Enzo. And sort of safe but not so safe is Nicholas Jackson. He has deteriorated in form. Now, if you believe that it could be number 6 for Brentford in terms of not losing to Chelsea, then a combination of either Wisa or Mbeumo would be a good captain choice. But not when Salah is available if you have him. Now, Spurs should be favorites in their game, and Solanke would be a decent shout. Bournemouth versus West Ham. Whichever Bournemouth player you pick, if you pick the right one, you're in for something. And West Ham is just Jared Bowen. Looking at the FDR, Arsenal have Everton, Crystal Palace, Ipswich, Brentford, and Brighton. These are good fixtures to have Arsenal players. Start getting into them. Aston Villa have Forest, City, Newcastle, Brighton, and Leicester. These are all tricky fixtures. Bournemouth have West Ham, Man United, Crystal Palace, Fulham, and Everton. Given how Bournemouth have been playing, I would have to say these are good fixtures for them. And if you can figure out who you want from that team, it will be good. Brentford have Chelsea, Forest, Brighton, Arsenal, and Southampton. Those are tricky fixtures, especially since most of those will be away. And the home game is Arsenal. So it's actually 4 tricky games and 1 winnable game. Brighton have
Crystal Palace, West Ham, Brentford, Villa, and Arsenal. To me, it seems like those fixtures are ramping up in difficulty. Kind of like how I said it for Manchester City that time back, and then they proceeded to lose 5 in a row. Chelsea have Brentford, Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, and Crystal Palace. All winnable fixtures. Get into Chelsea. Crystal Palace have Brighton, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Southampton, Chelsea. Thankfully, they've picked up form. These are not easy fixtures. Only Southampton is easy here. The rest they really have to fight. So I wouldn't encourage you to get into this team right now. Speaking of other teams not to get into, Everton have Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, then Forest and Bournemouth, descending in difficulty, but still difficult. Fulham have Liverpool, Southampton, Chelsea, Bournemouth, Ipswich. The truth about Fulham is that they could get something in these things, just don't depend on their defense. Ipswich have Wolves, Newcastle, Arsenal, Chelsea, Fulham. It doesn't matter who they play, it seems like they can't win a game. So, yeah, I've said what I've said. Leicester have Newcastle, Wolves, Liverpool, Man City, Aston Villa. Goodness, no wonder they sacked Cooper. If Ruud can navigate these 5 matches and get even 6 points, he will have done an amazing job. Liverpool have Fulham, Tottenham, Leicester, West Ham, and Man United. All winnable games. The Tottenham one is a really tricky one in that list. Man City have the United Derby, and then Villa, Everton, Leicester, West Ham. Ordinarily, I would say this is easy for them, but no, anything can happen in these fixtures. I don't know who Man City are, and nobody is. United have City, Bournemouth, Wolves, Newcastle, Liverpool. So this gives him a time to figure out who his best players are, and see what January will do. I am not sure what Manchester United are, so I don't know how to recommend their players outside like Ahmad Fernandez. Newcastle have Leicester, Ipswich, Villa, United, Tottenham. United, Tottenham. Newcastle, these are tricky fixtures. I honestly could see them winning all of them and then losing 3 of them. It just depends on how they figure things out moving forward. Forest have Villa, Brentford, Tottenham, Everton, and Wolves. I'll just say if you have Wood, keep him. If you need another one, get Morgan Gibbs-White, and then just see what happens. They're the team that you just, let's see what they can do. Let's just throw a challenge and let's see how they respond. Southampton have Tottenham, Fulham, West Ham, Crystal Palace, Brentford. In theory, these are winnable games, but it's Southampton, so they should struggle. Spurs have Southampton, Liverpool, Forest, Wolves, Newcastle. 3 of those are purely winnable games, but because they are who they are, it's a mixed bag. But these are kind fixtures for them on paper. West Ham have Bournemouth, Brighton, Southampton, Liverpool, and Manchester City. Man, Lopetegui has 3 games to give the fans something to be happy about, so that by the time they lose to to Liverpool and Man City, the fans aren't too disappointed. But if they're losing by the time they get to Liverpool, I'm not sure he'll be there for Liverpool. Anyway, Wolves have Ipswich, Leicester, Man United, Spurs, Forest. All winnable games, but maybe the damage was done by their first few games where they were so disappointed. I'm not sure if they can overcome this, but let's just see. And with that, we should be able to plan for the next few weeks. December is going to come quick and fast. Be attentive. And also remember that if you have a wildcard that you haven't used, use it before the 27th. That is when it expires. Apart from that, have a lovely rest of the week. Bye.